Hi everyone and welcome along to this week's video. It is the third week in June now and I thought it would be lovely to go and show you around the garden today, show you what the differences are between May and June in the flower patch. Lots of changes have been happening. In May we had all our tulips and narcissi, the late flowering ones, out. We had the start of the alliums, we had a few perennials like Jacob's Ladder and Aquilegia coming through, but it was a bit too early for our summer annuals. That all changes in June. We have now got our summer annuals flowering. We've got lots of lovely perennials flowering as well, and some of our ranunculus and anemones and those kind of flowers that we had in May are starting to fade now. So it's a transition period in the garden away from those late spring flowers now towards the summer flowers in the garden. The bees are all loving the different varieties of blooms. We've got a resident hedgehog in the garden as well, which we found running around at night time, much to the kids' delight. And we've got some lovely flowers. So let me go and show you what it's looking like just now in the garden. Lots of lovely sweet peas, which I've been continuously cutting from since the beginning of June. Had a little bit of a problem with some thrips on some of them this year, which is the first time that's ever happened. Lots of really pretty cornflowers now starting to get into full swing in the garden as well. These are autumn sown ones, which are always the first to really bloom well. So the Arlea has been fantastic throughout the whole of June, and here I've actually done some interplanting. So the Arlea was in full swing, but it had some spaces in between, so I have planted the sunflower seedlings here, and these are just starting to gain some height now as the Arlea is starting to come to a peak flowering. So it'll be finished soon and can be removed, leaving the sunflowers behind, which will grow on. And this is what I'm doing to make the most of my bed space, because I'm really trying to max it out this year and get as many flowers into the beds as I can. And these are the poppies that I grew from seed this year, and they're absolutely fantastic, but we're just a little bit too late for the wedding that I was hoping to use them for, but they look really pretty in the garden now. Cockles are a really lovely flower. They've got nice strong stems, and I use them a lot in jam jar arrangements for our local customers. And they are another hardy annual that I've been growing since the autumn and overwintering, and that's them flowering just now in June. First snaps of the season are starting to come out just now as well. This This is Phacelia, which is a great favourite cut flower of mine. And do you remember the leggy seedling video that we did back in March, April time? Well, this is the Phacelia that was the leggy seedlings flowering away now, which is fantastic. In June the Saponaria comes out. I grow pink and white Saponaria from seed. This is something that I grew in the late winter this year, so it's coming out into flower now. Gypsophila Covent garden has flowered really well since the beginning of June. This was all the autumn sown ones as well, so they're starting to finish now, and the spring sown ones are starting to just come into bloom. Got a bit of buplerium in the background as well there, which is a fantastic filler. I've got lots more of that just coming through as smaller seedlings. One of my top favourite summer annuals is Nigella, and it has started just last week to come into bloom this year, so mid-June onwards, and it is really getting going now. Just cutting a few Nigella today for a florist bucket as well. Lots of lovely blue Nigella. These ones are on shorter stems, but they're fantastic for using for jam jar posies. So this year is showing the succession sowing. We've got Nigella here that was planted at a later time than the blue flowering one I showed you a minute ago. And this will flower in July probably for me, maybe August time. And it'll just give me that succession of flowers so that I had Nigella through June, July and August. Here's these lovely lupins in the garden. These are just coming to the end now of their flush of flowers for the year. They've been fantastic since the beginning of June, and we're now 3 weeks into June. And if you cut the lupins back, you'll get a resurgence of stems with slightly shorter ones for arrangements. Today I'm cutting Linaria Canon Went for a florist bucket of flowers, and it's a really easy perennial to grow from seed. Really pretty, lots of nice spikes to add to bouquets. I also grow purple Linaria Canon Went as well as the light pink variety. I've been cutting a lot of Astrantia for florists this month. June is a really great month for the Astrantia to come out, but if you cut it back just now you might get a second flush in September time as well. A question I'm often asked is what flowers grow really well in my garden here in Scotland, which is zone 8B. And Astrantia is a perennial I definitely recommend. It does really well for me every year, no matter what the weather conditions. And in Scotland it can be really variable. Every year can throw different things at us. It can be a really rainy, cold year, or it can be a hot, drier year. But Astrantia always does really well. Lady's Mantle is out in June, and that's another great filler for bouquets. Just lasts a few weeks in the garden. It self-seeds everywhere though, so you'll find that you've got little Lady's Mantle seedlings popping up where you least expect them. You can either remove them or you can dig them up and transplant them to somewhere that is more suitable for them to be in the garden. Then Saponaria montana, the perennial cornflowers, have flowered their socks off for the last couple of months, and they're still flowering now, but they're starting to get really tatty and they tend to flop over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them hard back in the next week so that hopefully they will continue to flower from new stems over the summer and autumn. Just look at these Eryngium Zabelli Donnard. They are absolutely fantastic, aren't they? They have just come out this week, so that's the third week in June, and they're always the first Eryngium to come out in the garden. They're for big arrangements, these ones, because they've got larger heads on them, but I also grow other kinds of Eryngiums that have smaller heads which fit into bouquets nicely or work for buttonholes. Just starting to be a little bit of colour in the buds of the Achillea, the yarrow, so I think it'll be July before this is ready. Beginning of June is when the Dutch iris come out. Lots of lovely colours this year, from pale lilacs to deep blues to whites. They are fantastic flowers to come out and be used in bouquets in early June because they're big, nice structural flowers. So it's the second last week in June now, and the allium purple rain are just starting to come to an end now. They've been very pretty this year. Large heads though, these heads are about 15 to 20 centimetres in diameter, which is a little bit too large for using for bouquets, but really good as statement pieces if you're needing something for large floral arrangements. At the beginning of the month as well, we had all the irises and the Cornish jacks out. These are Gladioli, and they've been really pretty, just starting to fade just now. Hesperus is really beautiful in May, but it's just coming to the end of its flowering now. You can see that on the stems, the initial flowers have all faded here and here and here, and then you've just got the top flowers left, which sometimes get a little bit weather damaged by now, so they're not usable in bouquets. But still look really pretty in the garden, so I'll leave them until they finish flowering, and then I'll chop them back really hard so that hopefully they'll give me a second flush of flowers in the autumn time. So in last week's video we had a look at sowing biennials, and one of the biennials was Sweet William, and this has just started to flower in the last week, so mid-June again for me. So I sowed it this time last year and it is flowering now, and they are really good workhorses in arrangements because they've just got lovely strong stems and come in lots of bright colours. This is Mallow, which I have grown from seed last year, and it's going to flower its socks off soon. There's lots and lots of buds coming on lots and lots of stems of this. It's another really easy one to grow from seed. This is a real workhorse for me in the garden as well. It does really well each year. Really easy perennial to grow from seed, and it's feverfew, and it's a really good filler for bouquets. As you can see here, there is going to be hundreds of stems of feverfew in the next few weeks, and so it grows really, really well here in the flower patch. The Ranunculus is starting to fade now, not getting as many flowers, and the leaves are starting to yellow, which is a sign that they are finishing off flowering for the year. So let the foliage die back, and then I will dig them up and store them until they're ready to get pre-sprouted in the autumn again. And that'll give me more bed space for putting in some late flowering sunflowers. So got lots of dahlias in the ground now. These are starting to look really good, put on good growth outside in the garden. Next job is to get the stakes in beside them so that they've got lots of support for growing up. I just love roses in the garden, and this week they've all started to come into bloom. The ones that I have flowering in the garden are largely David Austin roses, and I have varieties such as Olivia, Generous Gardener, Desdemona, Gentle Hermione, Teasing Georgia, and Munstead Wood are just a few of the varieties that I grow. The perfume's gorgeous, the flowers are gorgeous, and I just love watching them come out in bloom each year. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, having a look around the garden at the flower patch. It's certainly starting to change, and there's an awful lot of jobs that still need doing, and we've got another week of school and then the kids are off for the summer holiday. So I like to try and have everything planted out if I possibly can. I've got my biennial seeds sown in the greenhouse, still waiting for them to germinate. I have got sunflowers that need planted out and some zinnias. I'm trying to decide whether to keep them in the greenhouse or try them outside. I'm not sure we're going to have the hottest summer for them, so it's going to be a bit of an experiment if I do plant them out. I can see buds on the dahlias. This year I was behind in my staking. I tried to get the dahlias in the ground, but I didn't put the stakes in with them, so I definitely need to go back and do that because they're getting taller now and they need that support. But I don't think it's going to be long before we've got dahlia flowers, so July it'll be exciting to come back and show you what's happening then. And then towards the end of the summer we might get the first chrysanthemums as well. I don't know about you, but with the flowers also comes the weeds. So at this time of year there is a lot of them out there, especially if it has been raining a bit and the warm weather. It really does bring them on. My worst culprits are definitely creeping buttercup and also nettles, and also I have quite a bit of docken leaves. They're quite difficult to get out as well, and grass that creeps into the beds. So it's trying to keep on top of that and make sure that they're not crowding out the flowers. It's going to be impossible for me to have a completely weed-free garden when I'm looking after the kids and I've got all their activities and getting them to school and walking the dog and everything, as well as doing all the flower arranging and cutting for florists. It's impossible to have a perfect looking garden, but I do try to keep on top of the weeds as much as I possibly can. What weeds do you find most difficult to keep on top of in your garden, and have you any suggestions on how best to keep on top of it? I was also going to ask, is there any videos that you would like to have coming up over the summer months? If you've got any ideas at all, please just put them in the comment section, or just drop me an email or message me on Instagram or Facebook. It would be great to hear from you and get some ideas about future videos that I can do. So I'm just going to leave you now with a few flowers that I have been arranging this June. So some for retail customers and some buckets for florists, and I'll give you an idea of the kind of seasonal flowers that I'm working with at this time of the year.